We're going to gather the wonderful table guide folks. Come on over here. Yes, sir.
Hi, Megan.
right on the bone. Our lives are Christ these days. Right? So I pray this will be an equipping experience for everybody who comes to it. Okay? So let's just see what happens. Lord God, we thank you that you have promised to be with us, no matter what. Lord, I pray that to every table that there will be leading in, listening, hearts and minds and souls, and just times of discovery, realizations perhaps this morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Just want to encourage you to find a place to land, grab a table. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Just want to say hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Saw you coming in the
Good
door.
to see you, Dave.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Hey, Paul. How are you? Okay, well, welcome to the Salt Company, and especially want to welcome those of you who are joining us online today. Glad that you are here to join us in this conversation. I want to say to you folks who are at home that I may forget to say this to you later. We're going to have this table talk time later on, and we're going to put the discussion questions on the screen for you at home to see so that you can at least think about what we're doing for 30 minutes, or maybe you can have a conversation with folks around you during that same 30-minute time period. So that's where we have in mind for you at home when we come to the table talk time. And glad you're a part of this gathering this morning. And everyone else who is here, those of you who are new to the Salt Company, we call ourselves seasoned adults for two reasons. One is that we've lived through some seasons of life. Amen? Yeah, and the second, far more importantly, is that we call ourselves seasoned in the sense of what happens when we receive Christ into our lives. We become something new. We are transformed. We become a new creation, the Bible says. And Jesus is the one who calls us what we become. He says, you have become the salt of the earth. And when we're the salt of the earth, that means we have a purpose in life from which there is no retirement. To be the salt of the earth, to be is about God's work in this world all of our days. And this is a place where we pull off what we call Route 60 Plus to share around our tables some of the adventures, what it's like to navigate the ever-changing terrain on Route 60 Plus, or plus plus, or plus plus plus. And there is a lot that we have have been through, and we are facing, and we are going to do this together. So this is a place where we are recharged, retool, refuel for what the Lord has for us next. So we also want to do celebrations, and it's November, and just a couple things. I'm aware that tomorrow is Veterans Day. So if you're not, a lot of you know this, maybe some of you don't realize it's always November 11th, because November 11th, 1918 was the end of World War I. And that's the date we use to celebrate our veterans. So I just want to have those of you who served in the Army, please stand. Those of you, there's more. Now, we're not going to favor just the Army. Those of you who served in the Navy, would you please stand? Those of you who served in the Air Force or the Air Corps, please stand. Yeah. How about the Marine Corps? Those who serve in the Marine Corps. Oh, man. How about the Coast Guard? Anybody serve in the Coast Guard? Yeah. I'm also aware, I was thinking about veterans broadly. These different services, but there are also those who serve perhaps in the government, working in the cause, or maybe not affiliated with any of these branches of service. If that's you, please stand. Thank you. Yeah. We appreciate, that's putting it in such inadequate terms, what you guys done, men and women have done, serving our country, helping us be the country we are today, helping us be where we are today. Thank you. And I just encourage all of us to be thanking veterans today and tomorrow for your service. Thank you so very much. Also, it's November, so any anniversaries in November in the room? Okay, birthdays in November. Oh my goodness. Okay, so shout your name to your table. Make sure we know your name at your table. And your table is responsible to insert your name when we sing that part of the happy birthday song. You get it? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Insert name. Happy birthday to you. All right, we are glad you are on the planet. Oh my goodness. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time here at Salt Company, today our theme this fall is living a Psalm 23 kind of life. Let me say that again. Our theme is to live a Psalm 23 kind of life. What might that be like? How is that possible, right? To live a Psalm 23 kind of life. We have a guide helping us. This is Dallas Willard, who wrote the book on your table called Life Without Lack. Not required reading, recommended reading, but not required. A lot of people are reading it. We have them for sale in the bookstore if you'd like to take a look at them over there. Willard is teaching about the 23rd Psalm from 8 chapters, becoming 8 vista points. Imagine the Yosemite Valley with 8 vista points on it. 8 different ways of looking at the same magnificent space. Each of these chapters that we're walking through is like a vista view on this magnificent terrain that Psalm 23 opens up for us. To live this life without lack is to see it from these 8 different perspectives. The other book on the center of your table is wrapped in a map simply to say we're exploring spiritual terrain. And then you'll see those Sierra cups on your table. It's just a way to depict what is this Psalm 23 kind of life like. It's like a cup of cold mountain spring water on a hot, challenging hike. You know, when we're really thirsty, that's what this, he leads us beside still waters. He anoints our heads with oil, and our cups overflow. It's just a way to try to depict this Psalm 23 kind of life. That's why we have that cup on the table. You know, it occurred to me that this is a good time. It's our 5th of 8 on the Psalm 23 kind of life. It's time for you to meet Dallas Willard. Dallas Willard was a professor. First of all, he was a pastor, and then he went back to school and got his PhD in philosophy, became a philosophy professor at USC for 46 years, a writer, someone who has helped us in the Christian movement all over the world for many, many years and still to this day. Dallas went to be with the Lord about 10 years ago. In this talk he was giving at Westmont College, I think it was a talk at a Westmont College chapel. We're just going to do about a 3-minute clip of this just so you can meet Dallas Willard. Have a look.
Now it is my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Dallas Willard. Dallas is no stranger to Westmont College. He has been in and out of our environs many times. In fact, most recently as our commencement speaker.
So many people think sunspots are from the sun. In fact, they have nothing to do with the sun, and I'm going to tell you the simple way to avoid them. Sunspots have to do.
He received his MA and PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is an expert in philosophy and especially the field of phenomenology. In fact, his translation of Edmund Husserl's work, Logical Investigations, is one of the leading translations in the field. Dallas has taught since 1965 at USC, where he has interspersed his time as a writer and teacher with serving on a variety of committees and also as department chair. Over the last 25 years, however, much of Dallas's attention has shifted to issues which are pertinent to Christianity and our place among the great traditions of our world. He is the author of numerous books, including The Spirit of the Disciplines, Hearing God, Renovation of the Heart, The Divine Conspiracy, The Great Omission, and most recently, Knowing Christ Today. In Knowing Christ Today, one of the most
of how to save your life. That's a question that concerns everyone. How to save your life? Well, you say, I think I'd like to save my soul. Well, how about the rest of you? Would you like to save your body? Would you like to save your mind? After all, you, the whole person, is what salvation is concerned about. But when we start talking about salvation, often we have a very shrunken idea of being saved. Now, you all know that being saved is big business for Christians, isn't it? And someone may have asked you, are you saved? Or you may have asked someone else, are you saved? And we can begin from the question, what were you asking about when you asked that question, or when that question was asked you? And in our circles, it almost always refers to one thing. And that is what's going to happen to you after you die. Are you going to heaven? Or are you going to that other place? But you know, there's another question that we need to ask ourselves. If you got into heaven, do you think you'd like it? What's it going to be like? And if your life is not caught up in God now, heaven may turn out to be unbearable. Because unless you're really close to God now, you can't miss him when you get to heaven. Someone said the other day that if you don't like worship, you don't want to go to heaven. If you do like worship, then you're probably going to spend a lot of time in it here, and it's probably going to have a lot of effect on the kind of person you become. And that's what spiritual formation is about. Spiritual formation is the process of shaping the individual so that they love God with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind, and with all their strength. And they love their neighbor as themselves. And that's a big change, isn't it? I wonder if you've thought about how you love God with all your heart, how you love God with all your mind. How do you love God with your strength? I know some of you guys here are athletes. Can you love God with your athletic ability? And then, of course, all of you have lots of assignments. Can you love God in your assignments? We need to talk about that. I want to...
Good, thank you. So you can tell, it's just a little sample of him. You can tell he asks really good questions. The thing we missed at the very beginning of that clip was he began with, what is salvation? That's how this whole thing got started. And then he goes on this talk with these folks at Westmont College on that subject. So he asks really good questions, and he does as well in Life Without Lack about the 23rd Psalm. And the first question, the first vista point, if you will, where we began this whole series back in September, is the question of who is God? The Lord is my shepherd. Well, who is this Lord? Because if we have poor ideas, or if you use the language of shrunken ideas, distorted ideas, bad ideas, wrong ideas about God, then we certainly are not going to experience a life without lack with God. Does that make sense? We have to know who God is. We have to be learning about the kind of God it is that we worship. And then that way we will never be able, if we don't have those right ideas about God, then it's going to be really difficult to believe we have everything we need, especially when we don't have everything we want. The rest of the psalm might sound nice, but we're not going to be experiencing that life without lack if we don't first begin with who is God. First question. And that second vista, that led to second vista, which is about how we come, as we come to know more about God, we also come to know more about ourselves. They just absolutely are intertwined. We saw this. You cannot separate knowing God and knowing oneself. They are together. Because as I grow in my understanding of who God is, I have a sense of my not knowing, wanting to learn about God, and things I got to do in my life so that I can learn more about God. And as I do that, I learn more about myself. These things are so connected. So the exercise of my faithful imagination, my growing, my deepening comes along with my discovery of who God is in my life. Second vista. That led 2 salt companies ago to another good question. Why are there people on the planet? Why are we here? What is the purpose of human beings being on the planet? And then we saw that we have a calling on our lives, all of our lives, to be on his paths of righteousness. And as I'm going to keep saying in Salt Company, those of you who have come for a long time, you're never going to hear me stop saying there is no retirement from this. The paths of righteousness is a calling on our lives, all of our lives. Last time we came to a vista that most of us would probably rather skip. It's a necessary vista point. Willard asks another important question, honest question. Why is there such lack and evil in the world? Why? We had to talk about the real presence of evil in the world. We also talked, however, about how we can grapple with evil through the encounter and the power of Christ's life at work in and through us. And so we can pray with the 23rd Psalm, I fear no evil. And today that brings us to what Willard calls, and I doubt anyone here would disagree, is the key to living the Psalm 23 kind of life. The key is our faith. Makes sense? Faith in God. It is in the statement, the Lord is my shepherd. That's where my faith is alive. Yes, he is. So Willard begins with 2 quotes. Faith or trust is the key that unlocks our readiness to receive God's sufficiency in our lives, and to have faith in God is simply to trust God, to rely upon him in the face of all of our fears. In the face of all of our fears. So the question is begging, what is faith? Right? And we go to the biblical definition that's in the Bible of what faith is. This is Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 1. This beautiful chapter on all these stories of faith, right? And the definition is right here in verse 1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So let's unpack this just a little bit. So what I want, first thing to do is I want to suggest that we use the word trust instead of faith. The Greek word is pistis, pistuo, can just as legitimately be translated as trust as it can be translated as faith. Okay? So we all know how critical trust is. We get it when we say about trusting, we're immediately in relational categories of thinking. We're immediately into relying or unreliability of a relationship. So we could, especially when things get hard, so we could spread out Hebrews 11:1 maybe a little bit like this. Trust is what stands under, in the sense of trust is what lays the foundation and makes possible things. The word things in the Greek here is pragmata, pragmatics, things that we need to get done, matters that we need to get done, makes possible matters hoped for to help bring them into reality. Trust is the conviction of things or matters not yet seen. It all depends on trust, doesn't it? It's true in all of our relationships. It is true in our relationship with God, in the life that God has for us. Now, what is not seen? A few lines later in Hebrews, the scripture reads, "The worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things that are visible." What is not seen is referring to the word or the energy of God in action. What is not seen is the word or energy of God in action. This includes God's action in creation, right? It includes God's action in his creatures, Genesis 1, which, by the way, includes his action in you and me. So it makes good theological sense, just good sense, to say God makes it possible for you and me to trust Him. I think I got to say that again. God makes it possible for you and me to trust Him. So Willard writes, when we have faith, that is sure evidence that the word of the unseen God is active in us. Here it is. Faith is a gift. Faith is a gift. God creates it in our hearts. Okay with that? You guys good? I know this is a lot, but this is real. Willard says, I never worry about someone who wants to believe. You know anybody like this? Maybe this is you. I never worry about anyone who wants to believe because I know they already believe enough to believe more. Have anyone ever tell you, I want to believe? Already that's the grace of God in their lives. Already. And you can point that out. Oh, you want to believe? God is already with you in a way that you're already noticing. So Jesus invites us not just to believe with our heads, but He invites us into this ongoing relationship, an attitude of trusting, of the language of the Bible language is of continuing in His Word. That's how the Bible describes this, of continuing in His Word, which means doing what He says. Not just words, but actually doing what He says. And as a result, we will know a lived relational experience, a Psalm 23 kind of life. That kind of life with Jesus guiding us, sustaining us, providing for us, delivering us. My dear friends, fellow seasoned adults, as we navigate the ever-changing terrain on Route 60 plus. Here's the thing. Trust is not established in a moment. Right? That's the nature of trust. Trust grows richer, deeper, more robust over time and life experience through an interactive relationship with another person, with a friend, and most certainly with God. Willard invites us to have a seat then to take in one of the oldest known stories in the Scriptures of this experience. This is the story of Job. Job's story, I would submit, is not just a story about what happened to one person. Job is a story about what happens in our own stories. In Job's story, we're given a powerful glimpse of a pattern for human spiritual formation through and in the crucible of life experience in relationship with the Lord of all creation. So, 3 developmental stages of faith transformation. I was saying to the table guys before we started today, I hesitate using the language of stages because it sounds like 1, 2, 3, and we kind of pocket ourselves. I don't want to suggest that, but this might help to help us to have a sense of where we are with our faith, and we move around in these things perhaps. So I offer this not as a way to just, I'm 1, I'm 2, I'm 3. That's not what I'm trying to encourage. You guys are going to talk about this at your tables in a few minutes. So with that, Job's story begins with the faith of propriety. The faith of propriety. In the beginning, Job, you know the story, he lives a prosperous, successful life. He's a good religious man, right, who sees to his family's welfare. John Ortberg says he's the first helicopter parent. He's constantly monitoring his kids. And when they mess up, he goes and makes sacrifice for them so they're good with God, right? He's the responsible, faithful guy. The faith of propriety is religious faith that can be essentially superstitious, relying on ritual to get everything right in order to what? Maintain control. Right? The prosperity gospel fits here. Health and wealth gospel. If you get it just right, all will go well for you. That's his faith and propriety thinking. I think it's what is behind the establishment of all the detailed law codes in Judaism that were all developed out of the diaspora, out of the exile experience in Babylon. The Judaism movement, the law codes of Judaism in such great detail, the spirit of them, I think, were, we don't want to be doing whatever we did that caused us to have to be cast out of our land into Babylon. How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Let's not mess up again. Let's put a hedge around our life in God so we don't ever mess up again. Right? 613 law codes. That's why they would finally lay out, how do we make sure we don't mess up with Sabbath? Well, we're going to say how many steps you can take on Sabbath. It's a faith of propriety. It's not all bad. You could be worse than be a Pharisee. There are worse things. But then after the conversation between God and the Satan, you know this, all hell breaks loose. All hell breaks loose in Job's life. There are probably people in the room right here or online right now who are feeling like, yep, that's me. All hell has broken loose in my life. How many homes were lost in the Camarillo and the mountain fire? What did it turn out to be, 200? Something like that? Anybody in the room like that? Did you lose a home? Anybody here? Okay. You probably know people who have, and to them, I would bet it feels like all hell has broken loose in their lives today. It's when these kind of things happen in our lives that the faith of propriety gets exposed, right? Even though Job has done everything right, horribly bad things have happened to him. Job loses everything he valued. His family, except for his wife, who's not a terribly encouraging person. His livelihood, his reputation, his health. His friends show up. And his friends, all who hold a faith of propriety, come to be with him. The first thing they do is the very, very best thing they could have done, and they should have stopped right there. They sit Shiva with him for 7 days and say nothing. Brilliant, absolutely wonderful, beautiful thing to do. It's what comes next where they really mess up. They start giving him advice. Out of the faith of propriety, well, Job, what you need to do is, let me just stop right here. I just want to say a word to all of us that when we're with someone who's in great pain, who is experiencing great loss, all hell breaking loose in their lives, what they don't need to hear from us is our advice. Because when we are offering advice, let's get really honest. What are we really doing? We're trying to help ourselves, aren't we? Because we're so uncomfortable with all hell breaking loose in someone else's life, we got to try to fix it for ourselves. We're not helping the other person. What we need to do is sit Shiva, be with, right? And if someone wants advice, wait for them to ask for it. His friends say, well, Job, well, clearly you've messed up. You've done something wrong. Admit it, then God will make it all good. Right? Now, Job will not receive that advice. You know the story. Because he's not done anything wrong. But notice, very importantly, Job will also never give up on God. In spite of his friends. And God, this is so amazing, and through the whole story of Job, God knows Job's heart, right? And what Job will come to see about God, a deeper kind of knowing that is emptied out of any sense of Job having any control. This is huge for us as human beings, because we want to have control. So Job comes into a second developmental stage of faith that Willard calls the faith of desperation. This is a faith that holds on no matter what happens. When we lose, when we get sick, when we watch what we cherish go down the drain or up in flames, when the people we believe solid and trustworthy turn out not to be. It's hanging on when the earth starts to shake. We know earthquakes. Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. I think this room, especially this room, this community of Salt Company, we seasoned adults understand, or we will understand, the faith of desperation and what this feels like, right? We come to that moment when everything we relied on is gone. What happens to us rocks what we thought we knew about God in His ways. And when we come to that moment, either we give up, throw our hands up in the air, and slip into total, absolute despair, or we let go of our assumptions about who God is and how He works to open ourselves to finding Him right where we are in ways we had never thought possible before. And only then do we come to a deeper sense of God's presence. Like Job, we are on the path of knowing the reality of God. Guys, I know this is a lot, but this is real. When our assumptions about God and God's ways don't hold up under the weight of our most difficult, distressing experiences, as Willard puts it, we find that God's address is found at the end of our ropes. Let me tell you a story about a man that I've privileged to meet in a church where I pastored many years ago. His name was Dave Carey. Dave was an A-4 pilot in Vietnam, flying off aircraft carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin. He was flying over North Vietnam, and he took a missile, and he shot down, captured by the North Vietnamese. He shared his story with us in church where I was pastoring as associate pastor years ago. Captured, tortured, as John McCain was. Tie his hands up like this and suspend him like this to dislocate his shoulders, create enormous pain. And after one of these sessions, they cut him down and let him just collapse on a concrete floor in a dark, cold cell and leave him there in the utter darkness, trying to break him. And Dave said, I'm laying there on the concrete, just in enormous pain, feeling like he was about ready to lose his mind, and a phrase came to his mind. And the phrase was, "The Lord is my shepherd." And then he thought, what's the next phrase? I shall not want. What comes after that? He leads me beside still waters. And he remembered, forced his mind to remember what he had learned as a kid in Sunday school. And Dave said that 23rd Psalm saved his life, saved his mind. He was in prison for 5 years, as John McCain was. And the stories he tells of how they transcended, their captivity. They would tell the captor, for example, the North Vietnamese would interrogate them and say, where'd you grow up? I grew up in Kansas. On a farm. Where'd you guys grow up? We grew up, Doc. What's up, Doc? See, you get the point. Having some fun with the prisoners, the guards. They had that kind of capacity to be able to transcend their situation. He was a leader in a church where I was serving, and to this day, Dave is he still bears witness as a consultant and a motivational speaker. He lives out in Texas now. He bears witness to the life of sufficiency that's in Christ. As disorienting as it can be, it's only when we let go of our distorted, limited ideas of God and His ways that we come to trust Him in deeper and stronger ways. Willard puts it like this: regardless, when you have nowhere else to turn except to God and you turn to Him, your faith of desperation will meet the fullness of God, and you will taste the life without lack as you discover the depths of the faith of sufficiency. That's the third stage. So Job's friends have left. He has come to the verge of experiencing something deeper than anything he had ever known up to this point. God comes like a whirlwind. In the Bible, the word for spirit in Hebrew is ruach. Ruach can be translated as wind, breath, or spirit. That one word means all three of those things. A holy, wild wind. We get it about wind, right? Man. This is a while back. One of the Santa Anas we had blowing through here, I walked out on the street in the morning, and my neighbor had clipped his bills pickup for the mail by the mailman. He had clipped his bills to the mailbox. They were all over the street. There's bills flying all over the place. This last big win we had this last week, Suzanne and I realized that we might need to be ready to evacuate. I mean, a lot of folks here, maybe somebody, I know we had power turned off, lots of places. Maybe somebody had to evacuate. We were thinking, well, what if we get the call? Which led us to putting together a go bag, which led to searching for key papers and information, which led to stressing over where we might find all that stuff, which led to realizing we have a lot of work to do, all because of wind. Wind reminds us that we are not in control, right? So throughout all of this ordeal, Job cried, I would like to appear before God. I want to talk to God. Do you want to talk to God? How's it sound to you? If you want to talk to God and pursue your desire to talk to God, guess what? God is going to grant you that talk. God's way, God's timing, you're going to have your talk. I think Job would say, buckle up. For 2 chapters, God asks Job questions that he cannot answer. God shows and shares with Job the beauty and his joy in creating everything. Not just to intimidate, I don't think, but to just share God's joy with a human being. Overwhelmed, Job catches his breath and he answers, I know that you can do everything and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. When Job let go of his old assumptions of an earlier stage, that faith of propriety that says, if I'm good enough, I'll be spared suffering and God will reward me. It's kind of like a merit system, isn't it? Christianity really is a merit system, isn't it? No, it's not, right? When he even let go of his faith of desperation, even letting go of his faith of desperation, holding on to only what was left, which was just to hold on. His trusting God carried him to this place where he was open wide to what God wanted to show him. Where Job would and could take in an undeniable experience of God that changed his life. Willard adds right here, this is why we need to live in clear view of the cross. When we look at what Christ did for us on the cross and keep that at the center of our vision, there are not many things that will bother us or even matter at all. when we realize that Christ went willingly to the cross on our behalf, trusting in the greatness of his Father, it casts a transformative light on our own sufferings. That's what Job saw. Job beheld the greatness of God. To see God is to see ourselves truly, that the Lord is our shepherd. And because of his love for us beyond our comprehension, no matter what happens in our lives, we have a life without lack. I can't think of anyone who can bear witness more eloquently, more personally, and powerfully to this than Johnny Tada Erickson. Have a look.
I grew up in a very athletic family, tennis, horseback riding. My earliest memories of hearing about the God of the Bible, though, was around the campfire on the beach of the Delaware shore with my sisters, my mom and dad, hearing stories of Noah, David, Moses, Daniel. But God he really wasn't very personal. All that changed, though, when I was a 14-year-old kid, went away on a kind of a church weekend retreat. And I was challenged by the speaker. He said, "Kids, I want you to measure your lives up against the 10 Commandments." Well, I had never committed adultery, or I don't think I stole anything in a big way, but you know what? It didn't matter. As I measured my life up against those commandments one by one by one, I got this overwhelming sense that I'm missing the mark. I'm not going to make it. Oh, God, help me. It troubled me at first that God gave us a bunch of commandments that he knew very well we couldn't keep. But then it hit me at that weekend retreat. It hit me, that's why Jesus came. He was the one who kept the commandments. He was the one who obeyed the law, even though I didn't and even though I couldn't. I was only 14, but I was able to reach out right then and embrace Jesus and say, I need you. I want to make it out of earth alive, and you're my only passport, so please. Well, I came home from that weekend retreat all fired up, all pumped, all excited. But then through high school, the enthusiasm of what I had done began to wane, especially when I started confusing the abundant Christian life with the great American dream. My prayers were so self-centered, like, God, help me to lose weight. God, I need a new boyfriend. God, give me good grades on this test. Unfortunately, I guess I thought I had done God a great big favor by accepting Jesus as my Savior. And I remember right around my senior year of high school, I prayed, Lord, I'm not doing this Christian thing right, and I know it. I don't want to go off to college and defame your good name, smear your reputation. I know it's about far more than just me, so do something in my life to jerk it right side up, because I'm really living this life wrong. Just a few weeks after high school graduation, as I was preparing to head off to college, my sister Kathy invited me to go to the beach for a swim. I swam out to this raft, athlete that I was, I didn't even touch bottom, hoisted myself up onto it, and then took this really stupid dive into what ended up being extremely shallow water. I snapped my head back when I hit bottom, and it crunched my 4th cervical vertebrae, severing my spinal cord. There I was lying face down in the water, desperately hoping that my sister Kathy would please notice that I had not surfaced from my dive. Unbeknownst to me, her back was turned to me. She didn't even see me take that dive. But a crab bit her toe. And it so startled her that she quick turned around in the water to scream to me, Johnny, watch out for crabs. And when she did, she saw my blonde hair floating on the surface. I was face down, ready to drown. She came swimming quickly, pulled me up out of the water. And I never was so grateful for fresh air. She saved me. But for what purpose, for what reason? Because now, lying there in a hospital, doctors told me I was going to have to sit down for the rest of my life as a quadriplegic without use of my legs or even my hands. My hands don't work. And I remember thinking, God, is this your idea? of an answer to a prayer to be drawn closer to you? If it is, you're never going to be trusted with another one of my prayers again. I mean, I'm a new Christian. How could you have taken me so seriously? I sank into deep depression. I remember there were wonderful Christian friends who came to the hospital and they encouraged me. And one Bible verse they shared was from Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, where God says, I know the plans I have for you, plans not to harm you, but to help you, plans to prosper you and to give you a hopeful future. God, you mean you plan not to harm me? Well, what do you call quadriplegia, huh? What's that all about? As I read that verse and the context around it, I realized something, that when God said that, he was saying it to his children who were being dragged away into captivity by the Babylonians. They were going to exile. They were going into slavery. They had decades in front of them of hard, awful suffering. And I began to see that God's plans for a hopeful future for me was not necessarily jumping up, dancing, kicking, doing aerobics, running, walking, getting back use of my arms and my legs. No. God's plans for me go far deeper, a deeper healing, a precious healing of the soul. Because as I was pushed into the arms of God every morning, and that's the truth, even to this day, don't be thinking I'm an expert at quadriplegia, but as it was then in the hospital and as it is today, every morning I wake up saying, Jesus, I can't do this thing called life. Please help me. Please show up. Give me your smile. Give me your strength, because I can't make it through the day. And because I go to God with that earnest dependency and requirement of his grace every single day, I take that back. No, every single moment, I experience the sweetest, most precious, most intimate union with Jesus Christ. So in Jeremiah 29, when God says he won't harm us, doesn't mean the body, doesn't mean our circumstances. He's not going to do anything to harm our soul. Yes, our body may get harmed, but it will somehow serve to enrich our soul. In closing, let me just say that quadriplegia, 46 years of it, that's a long time. I deal with chronic pain. I had breast cancer a couple of years ago, and I remember as my husband was driving me home in the van from chemotherapy one day, we were talking about how suffering is like little splashovers of hell, kind of like waking us up out of our spiritual slumber. And then we pulled in the driveway and he said, well, then what do you think splashovers of heaven are? Are they those easy, breezy, bright times where everything's going your way, where you have health? And we said, no. Splashovers of heaven are finding Jesus in your splashover of hell. And to find Jesus in your hell is ecstasy beyond compare. And I wouldn't trade it for any amount of walking in this world.
Yeah. So let's go to our tables and have some conversation. Let's be back at 10:15, okay? Those at home, 10:15, we'll be back. So this is the 2-minute warning. Sorry. Thank you for your sharing with one another. This is a conversation where I think we're just getting started, right? This is something where we think about and just to be able to share with each other some of like the table I was to join in the conversation. There's just so much life to share with one another around this. I would just encourage you to continue this, with maybe folks at your tables, with your family, friends, neighbors. Through the week. It's very, very important stuff. I wanted to just wrap up with a few thoughts for us. And the first thing is to just simply say to seek the Lord. You want to have that conversation with Him. He wants to have that conversation with you. Seek the Lord and wait. Seek Him in prayer. Obviously, when you pray, listen as well as just speak. The Lord wants to speak with you and with me. Read His Word and listen as you read His Word. This takes time. It takes time away from noise. I highly recommend mornings. I really big time highly recommend being outside. To be in the environs of creation. The Lord speaks to us. Creation bears witness to God. Rather than being inside buildings like we are here. Nothing wrong with buildings. But there's something qualitatively different about being out in the creation. The second thing I want to say is do not fear your doubts. Do not fear your doubts. You know what your doubts are? They're flags of signals of where to dig. That's all they are. You don't need to fear your doubts. If I can help you with that, any of our pastors, we would love to have that conversation. Third thing is something Willard says very wisely at the very end of this chapter. Please do not try to believe anything. I love that. Simply say to God, Lord, give me faith. I am ready for it. This is the I want to want, right? I'm ready for it. Take me through whatever I need for it. He says that is the way forward to the faith of sufficiency. Good word. And then lastly, there was a pastor that I met along the way many years ago who said, I think very wisely, when the people of God act like the people of God, people tend to get well. When the people of God act like the people of God, people tend to get well. And that is a testimony to our gathering, Salt Company, fellowshipping, be a part of the community of Calvary Community Church if this is your church home, or maybe this needs to be, it should be your church home if it's not, if you don't have a place where you worship. Being together is such an important part of the growth of our faith into a faith of sufficiency. How do we walk this talk? We are gathering a church right now. We're gathering up toys The Special Abilities Ministry Christmas is coming up very soon. To support the event from November 2nd, which is when we've already started, through December 1, bring new unwrapped toys, stuffed animals, books, bikes, electronics for babies, toddlers, children, and teens into the collection boxes in the lobby. You've seen those, and that's already coming in. Usually cascades in, but just to have you be aware that we participate in that. And the second thing I just want is a walk the talk. Just think about who needs your presence this week. Who do you need to sit Shiva with, perhaps? Not an advice giver, but to be with. Maybe it's a young person at church. Notice the people who are on the side. Maybe even walking through the lobby today. Notice who people are on the sides. Practice being with, praying with, without advice giving unless it's asked for. And then the last thing, continue to contemplate the 23rd Psalm. Contemplate it. Commit it to memory so that you know it by heart. Right? Make sense? You guys good? Let's stand and say the psalm together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Go in peace, my friends. Serve the Lord. Amen.